Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How Modern Infrastructure Accelerates Time to Insights with Vertica. This event is brought to you by Vertica and Pure Storage. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for today's event. On this event, you'll learn how by combining Vertica and Pure Storage, you can achieve phenomenal agility, performance, scalability, and resiliency. By the end of this event, you'll understand how Pure FlashBlade provides N+2 durability to Eon Mode with simple management, high performance, and petabyte scale. Now, we want this to be an educational event, and as such, we encourage you to use the questions box in your audience console. We'll be answering those questions electronically throughout the event and queuing up the best questions for a dedicated Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. We also have a number of handouts available for download in your audience console in the Handouts tab. And finally, we'll be awarding an Amazon $300 gift card to one lucky attendee on the live event. If you're watching this event on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found there in the Handouts tab. And without further ado, I'm excited to introduce today's expert presenters. They are Mr. David Sprogis, Principal Product Manager at Vertica, and Mr. Miroslav Klevansky, Field Solutions Architect at Pure Storage. And with that, let's kick off today's panel discussion. And now I'm excited to be joined by David and Miroslav, and today's topic is accelerating time to insights with Vertica and Pure Storage. David, Miroslav, thank you so much for being here.
Really happy to be here.
Great to be here, Dave.
Excellent. Well, let's kick it off with our first question, and that is, what's the backstory here? How did Eon and FlashBlade come together?
That's a funny question. And it starts with this guy here, John Jovanovic from AT&T, who in one of Vertica's conferences stood up on screen, unbeknownst to any of us, and announced that he was putting a load into production on Eon Mode running on Pure Storage. I didn't know anything about this. Did you, Miroslav?
No, this was kind of news to us as well, and pretty exciting, but not something we planned ahead of time.
No, it was crazy. And after we got through the shock of it all, we stepped back and asked ourselves, why would he have done this? And the initial premise that we introduced Eon Mode was being able to scale infrastructure linearly, which is primarily an attribute interesting in the cloud, where you can access what you want when you want. And that really goes to the cloud economic promise. But what John was focused on are these two middle points, the isolating analytic workloads and improved database operations, both of which I will get into later. So how does Eon Mode work? Well, we separate compute from storage, and we had designed this primarily for the cloud, as I mentioned earlier, but John was running this on the Pure Storage, which offers an S3 compatible interface. And what that allows you to do is store the entire database consistently in this one communal storage object bucket. Each node manages its own segment. Architecturally, this allows you to scale independently and quickly, meeting the cloud economic promise. This architecture also allows you to scale independently of storage. In other words, you don't have to grow your storage at the same time that you're growing your compute. A byproduct of this architecture is the ability to isolate workloads through subclustering. Nodes are grouped into subclusters and able to service the different workloads independently. This means you can run an analytics workload in one subcluster without interfering with a dashboard in another subcluster. The other advantage is improved database operations, and particularly nodes that fail. When a node fails in Eon Mode, it's restored directly out of the bucket. And this is advantageous because it does not impose on the other nodes in your cluster or subcluster. This is a problem that plagues many columnar data stores, but not Eon Mode. So we looked at the FlashBlade. I'll pass it to Miroslav in a second. We looked at the FlashBlade and felt that it met the criteria for this. Miroslav?
Thanks, Dave. So, you know, when it comes to modern analytics, FlashBlade was designed for that space. That was one of our inspirations. And the way that we architected and built the FlashBlade, and, you know, I'll go into more details later on, but essentially what it does is it lets Vertica know that they have a partner in storage that is highly reliable, that provides the storage durability that Eon Mode needs, and can also keep up in terms of the performance and capacity that some of Vertica's largest customers require.
Well, David and Miroslav, I love hearing the backstory here about how this came to be, because we don't often hear that when it comes to, you know, most products. But why is running Eon on FlashBlade, you know, architecturally, why are these such a good match?
That was the first question that we asked ourselves when we were taking a look at the FlashBlade. And the table stakes for any communal storage for Eon Mode is data safety. The users need to be confident that their data is safely located, it's not going to get deleted or lost or invaded by any kind of virus or anything from the outside. So we took a look at data safety first. The next thing we looked at is performance at scale. This is critically important to Vertica customers because many of our customers are in the petabyte club. And so how does the communal storage operate when 100 or 200 or 300 nodes are all hammering at the same bucket? We also care deeply about the capacity for growth. You may not want to start at a petabyte. You may want to start at 10 or 20 or 30 terabytes. What's the range that a user of the FlashBlade can operate? And we want that performance to operate not only at the low end of the capacity range, but at the high end of the capacity range as well. We want it to operate not only as a data store for the Eon database, but users also stage data in object storage and use object storage for many other components of their overall data lake. Lastly, the storage has to be easy to use. No one wants to have to crack open a manual to understand how to use, how to deploy, and how to maintain the data storage over time. Taken all together, we found that the Pure Storage FlashBlade not only met but exceeded many of our requirements for the separation of compute and storage. So let's take a closer look at the specification itself. To the point of data safety, the FlashBlade offers 6 nines of reliability through its redundant components. It's self-healing, and it has native data encryption with rotating keys, all come together to give peace of mind to the Vertica user so that they can rest easily. Recall that we are outsourcing durability, the D, in ACID properties to communal storage. That data safety is chief among all other properties of the communal storage, and FlashBlade met that requirement handily. The next major point was capacity for data growth. So whether you're starting at 65, 70, or 80 terabytes and then growing into multiple petabytes, the FlashBlade would meet your needs. More than that, it scales so that you can start at the low end and grow over time. We really love that model. It's simply a model of plugging those blades into the FlashBlade unit. And performance grows as capacity grows. Again, very important, because you want that same consistent high speed, not only at the high end, but at the low end as well. You want it to scale, you want the performance to scale together with the capacity. And bringing them together, you want it to be easy as you deploy to have confidence that your capacity and scale out are working together. It's tuned for everything, as I mentioned earlier. We need the communal storage to be performant the way that the database accesses data, as well as the way that the user might be accessing that same data store, that same object store for other purposes. And of course, we need it to be easy to manage. We don't want to be cracking manuals and learning how to install, set up, configure, and maintain over time. And in particular, when the heat is on and something has gone wrong, you don't want to be looking through manuals while you're in DEFCON 1 or DEFCON 5, the worst of all situations when people can't access the database. So it's got to be easy to use. Overall, the separation of compute and storage is a model that we're seeing in the modern data center, and it comes largely from the ease of use in deploying in the cloud. We're seeing a lot of on-prem deployments looking and acting very much like cloud deployments, where it's infrastructure as code being deployed very easily, very simply, and this takes the load off the IT staff. So from a separation in compute and storage perspective, FlashBlade is a great partner with the Eon Mode separation of compute and storage architecture.
Wow. So I think I'm starting to realize here that this isn't just your regular storage array. This is a solution that has really mind-blowing performance, scalability, and resiliency. So let's dig a little bit deeper into, I know you talked about data safety. I'm curious exactly what that means, and some of the what-if scenarios when it comes to failures and hot swapping. What can you tell us?
Well, let me kind of jump in here. When we started with the FlashBlade, we had a couple of different goals. We wanted it to be big, we wanted it to be safe, and we wanted it to be very simple to operate. So to do that, we built out a bladed architecture. We really felt that what blades bring to the table is a level of simplicity and scalability. And it's a modern architecture that fits well with the kind of parallel workloads that people would want to use FlashBlade for. And just like Vertica is a massively parallel processing database that scales out to hundreds of compute nodes, we wanted to be able to continue to scale out the FlashBlade. So that was one part of it. The other one, this is sort of like the back of the box, but one of the things to think about here is this gives us reliability and simplicity. We have multiple network fabric modules that plug into the networks. Each one of these fabric modules has multiple network ports that you could put into multiple redundant switches for reliability. There are multiple power supplies, so you could plug them into different power feeds and survive power failures. All of this kind of redundancy for reliability is architected into the box. When you look inside the sheet metal, one of the things you could see is you have these different blades, but they plug into the two fabric modules. So there's redundancy on the fabric module level, but it's hidden from the user because the Purity software implements software-defined networking that not only simplifies all of this so that you need only a single IP address to access potentially petabytes worth of data, but we load balance all of those requests evenly across the blades and across those fabric modules to make sure that as you increase load and parallelism on the client side, you get to evenly scale and take advantage of all the power in those FlashBlades. And this is just a single chassis, but if you have you could grow this actually up to 10 chassis in a single namespace. And when you have 150 blades, another thing to consider is just all the spaghetti of wiring. if you had 150 1U servers, you would have multiple wires for each one of those on the networking side, multiple power cables, multiple console plugs, and who knows what else in order to wire that up. You end up with racks and racks of spaghetti. Here with the FlashBlade, everything is just very cleanly wired in and connected into the single namespace, and you get to not only collapse potentially racks worth of equipment into, you know, maybe half a rack worth of very powerful storage, but you eliminate the complexity of all that cabling, the mess, the chances that someone ends up pulling the wrong cable at the wrong time while doing maintenance. This is part of the simplicity story. If you drill into one of those blades, one of the things that you could see is it's essentially like a flash computer and a high performance SSD all in one. We have a CPU, we have memory, but we also have super caps that maintain our NVRAM to make sure that all of your writes and IOs are low latency. But if there is a power failure that gets past all of those redundant power supplies, then the data is flushed safely into the flash. And then we have an FPGA that manages our flash media. What that means is we have control and the ability to write to all of that flash in parallel. Compare that to like a traditional SSD that has a controller designed to be basically general purpose. It's not really built for high performance and analytics. It throttles how many flash die it can write at the same time. So we take that parallelism all the way from the software-defined networking through the multiple blades and down into being able to write in parallel to all of those different flash chips that are part of the blade. Let me talk for a little bit about the inspiration, the background, what went into making the FlashBlade. We started designing FlashBlade around 2012. And at that point, we already saw that there was going to be this exponential growth, this tsunami of unstructured data being generated by all of the digitization of life, all of the devices that are going to have telemetry and log data and everything else. So we saw this growth coming up, and we wanted an architecture that would be a really great match for the kind of processing people would want to do on petabytes. And, you know, I think IDC is estimating something like 75 zettabytes by 2025. I mean, this is insane amount of data, and being able to process it at speed takes a different approach and a different architecture. So that was the background and inspiration behind FlashBlade and what we put together. If you look into the FlashBlade architecture and how we built it, at the core, it's a massively distributed key value database. We decided that from a low latency scalable architecture, there really isn't anything better as a foundation. And that's what we architected around. And on top of that, we can now build out a lot of client-facing protocols that are standard, that all the different servers out there in the world know how to speak, like S3 object storage, and then native NFS and SMB on the file side. All of this is managed by our operating system that we call Purity FB. If you look into the file and object, we built it to be high throughput on top of that KV database. So you have a single platform that can give you the best ROI through having multi-protocol support on the same exact box, on the same media. You can do NFS and object, whereas, you know, historically in the past, part of what people did was they had one platform for object, another platform for file, you know, third platform for block. And sometimes they would introduce gateways or like other appliances to turn one flavor of data access into another. This is built from the ground up to be able to do multiple protocols smoothly and quickly. And it's also designed for flash from day one. So we knew that we wanted to be flash only, no rotating disks, and we didn't have to make the kind of compromises and choices in our code that are required to try to have spinning disk as well as flash. The end result is real world throughput that is in gigabytes. So we can typically get close to 1 gigabyte a second of reads and maybe about a third of that in writes per blade in the chassis, and scale it linearly. Again, I mentioned Pure DFB. This is the software that makes it all possible. It not only does all of the distributed KV database management, the protocol handling, it also does the software-defined networking and load balancing. So we integrate all of those pieces. This means you don't need a separate load balancer infrastructure to try to take advantage of your scale-out storage system. That seamless native scale-out delivers, again, linear scaling performance up to 75 gigabytes a second. But it also means that we get to distribute everything. We distribute the metadata, the files, the objects that underlie the unstructured data you're trusting us with and storing us with, or the structured data in terms of Vertica ROS files. And the architecture also dynamically self-tunes and self-heals. A lot of our processing happens using these stateless authority containers. So if something happens inside of a FlashBlade, a blade goes bad, it gets pulled out of the system, we can redistribute these stateless entities very, very quickly to get basically everything rebalanced without any hiccups or notices on the customer application side. And this is part of that unified database core. We talk about multidimensional performance. Like, what does that really mean? It means that we've built this to be able to handle a very broad range of the kind of workloads that show up in modern analytics. So whether it is, very high IOPS focused metadata workloads where you're trying to access billions of objects or billions of tiny files, that works well. If you're trying to do very high throughput reads where you're trying to scan through, many terabyte size files and be able to get many gigabytes a second of throughput, that also works well on FlashBlade. It's rare to be able to handle both types of workloads in the same platform, but FlashBlade was architected from the ground up to do that. And we're built to do it efficiently. So there's kind of a lot of the legacy compromises are architected out of the system. We have, like, as one example, variable block size for high efficiency. We don't need to have some fixed block size where if you're working with small objects or small files, most of that fixed block size is empty. You end up with a lot of wasted capacity, and Flash is a valuable resource. So we've built our product to do very efficient use of all the resources we have. And, I mentioned this multiple times, but we are built to basically be massively parallel. We write to that Flash directly, and we don't have any of these complicated legacy software translation layers like using SCSI or SAS and different gateways in order to address Flash chips that are accessed and written very differently from a rotating disk. Okay, all of that comes together through what we feel is sort of a superpower. It's our Pure One management platform. And this is a web portal and interface that lets you unify all of your different FlashBlade arrays into a single pane of glass. And just like Vertica has the management console that will let you manage potentially petabytes of database data through a single web interface. With Pure One, you have a single portal you can log into. We've enriched it with Meta, which is an AI-driven workload planner and capacity planning framework. You can do cloud-based management for your entire fleet. We have VM analytics. So if you're a VMware customer that has a large VMware environment, we can analyze and give insights into what the bottlenecks are behind your VMs. And all of that is also available through an app that you can run on your phone. So if you're a storage administrator or even a DBA that needs access to something on the fly, needs to check how things are going, you could just pull out your phone and get to all of this in one place. Cool. So with that, I'd like to kind of wrap up the FlashBlade architecture portion. Does this help explain why this is such a great fit when you need modern data analytics?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, being a former IT manager myself who used to administer those legacy SANs, I'm so delighted to hear that we don't have to make those legacy, compromises, the tremendous efficiency, that you're talking about, the VM analytics to find out what's going on with, storage performance and troubleshooting, and even the mobile app. I don't think I ever envisioned having a mobile app to monitor my storage. So that's really cool. So what's the next step? Where does Eon and FlashBlade, how do they go together? How do they work together in the future from here?
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so I didn't say it at the beginning, but and maybe I should have. The majority of Vertica's customers remain on-prem and are going to stay on-prem, and there are a number of reasons: data sovereignty, or it's incremental to data centers that they already have and have no plans for moving to cloud, and so that's another reason why Vertica and Pure Storage is a great fit, and Eon Mode on FlashBlade is a great solution. And we want to keep pushing that and find ways to accelerate adoption and migrate data quickly and easily. What does that mean? Well, our on-prem customers, with the exception of AT&T and a few others who have recently migrated, our user base is on enterprise mode, which is the prior architecture. And the switching costs are high, but the performance implications and those features I mentioned earlier, which is the workload separation, as well as the operational improvements of Eon Mode, are compelling, and the interest in switching is high. So migrating from the older architecture to the newer architecture not only means moving the data, but it also means adjusting for the differences in the way the data is managed, moving from enterprise mode over to Eon Mode. And we're looking for ways to accelerate that and make it easier. We have tools now that we'll continue to develop. Finding ways to support deployments with multiple data centers is also very interesting. Our customers who have multiple data centers replicate among them. And so are there ways that we can work with Pure Storage to synchronize data stores in multiple data centers, but more than that, to synchronize the actual databases themselves, not just the underlying data? Because of course, the catalog, which tells you where all the data is when a query comes in, needs to remain synchronous with the underlying data. So finding ways to do that will be important to helping those customers who want to maintain synchronous multiple databases in different data centers current. And then, of course, lastly, finding ways to scale for the larger data sets that Miroslav was alluding to in his chart about data growth. That is an important thing that we should all be thinking about how we're going to tackle. And so we'll see what the future holds, but I think we've got our challenges in front of us, and I'm looking forward to working together with Miroslav and the team at Pure Storage.
Yeah, same here. It's been an awesome partnership. It's been an awesome partnership, Dave, and I look forward to continuing to work together.
Great presentation, David and Miroslav. Now let's take some questions from the audience. All right, David, let's do some Q&A. We've got David and Miroslav here. Are you here?
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
We can, yeah, thank you. All right, let's see. While we take some questions, I'm just going to bring up a poll question for our audience. And the question on the screen there in the slides window is, what additional information would you like about the Vertica Pure Storage solution? We'll just leave that up while we do some Q&A. So let's see. I mean, the first question I wanted to ask you, I've got this down for you, Dave, and that is, you mentioned FlashBlade encryption protecting against viruses. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Thank you for bringing that up. That was a mistake. I should have said intrusion, not viruses, because viruses are going to corrupt your data whether it's encrypted or not. But it's the intrusion that encryption protects against. Thanks for helping me clarify that.
Absolutely, yeah, great point there. Next question comes in from Seth. He's asking, does Vertica and Pure Storage work or play nice with S3? And also, does Vertica run on-prem and or in the cloud? Who wants to take that?
Can I take that one?
Sure,
go
go ahead.
Great. So Vertica in Eon Mode started on the cloud on AWS, writing directly to AWS's S3 API. And it was by virtue of the fact that Pure Storage in their FlashBlade offers the S3 compatible API that we were able to run directly on the Pure Storage FlashBlade. It's why John Jovanovic at AT&T got the idea, hey, I wonder if I can make this thing work. So absolutely, Vertica, especially with Eon Mode, is after the hybrid play, which embraces both on-prem as well as in the cloud, and we're expanding on both fronts. You'll see us in additional clouds in the future. We're on GCP as well as Amazon today. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to hear that this solution can run in so many different places. Just tremendous flexibility. Next question comes from James. He's asking, how does a database like Vertica in Eon Mode make updates and appends when an object store like FlashBlade is write once, read many?
That's an insightful question. Thank you for asking it. The reason is that Vertica doesn't append or insert to existing files. It rewrites the files altogether. In fact, it does this during data loading, but it also does this in a process we call merge out, where we combine smaller files into larger files and maintain that important sort on whatever criteria is selected by the user for the way that they manage their data to support the queries that they're asking. So the sort order is very important, and the ability to write and rewrite those files is very important. But when we rewrite them, we're not rewriting over the existing object. We're creating new objects and invalidating the older objects, which is a perfect match with the FlashBlade and S3 API. Thank you for asking that question.
Nice, excellent. Okay. And this is another interesting question. I like this one. Can I have more than one Vertica in Eon Mode database running on the same FlashBlade?
Yes, that's another great question, and the question is absolutely yes. As Miroslav can confirm, you can have multiple buckets on the FlashBlade, and within each bucket, you can have a different database. Miroslav?
Yeah, you got that completely right. So you could have as many buckets as you want, and well, I mean, I guess there is some limit, but realistically, you could have multiple buckets. We organize those buckets into different accounts where the accounts have users. So technically, you could actually have multiple accounts, multiple teams that don't have access to each other's buckets, but would have multiple Vertica databases hosted on the same FlashBlade. And since a single FlashBlade can scale to many petabytes, you could actually consolidate many different databases onto the same FlashBlade storage platform.
Nice, very nice for consolidation. Great point. Okay, next question that came in, they're asking, FlashBlade has CPUs in each blade. Does Eon Mode run right on the FlashBlade itself?
Miroslav, you want to take that one?
Sure. So Vertica Eon Mode runs on nodes, like compute nodes, and those could either be bare metal, virtualized, or instances in a cloud if the FlashBlade is in an edge data center. The Vertica database itself does not run on the FlashBlades. The FlashBlades focus on providing, very fast, reliable S3 storage access for the Vertica databases that are running on the compute nodes.
Got it. Okay. And then next question is about basically where do I get this solution from? Do I purchase this from Vertica? Do I purchase it from Pure? Is it a kind of a joint solution? How does that work?
That's a great question. I think the best answer is that Pure Storage and Vertica are highly partnered on this solution, and you can reach out to your favorite salesperson at either team, and they will work together with their counterparts in order to help you resolve your architectural questions and investigate the solution as a possible fit for your needs. You can test drive Vertica in Eon mode on any of the, on AWS or GCP, and Vertica more broadly to include enterprise mode on any of the clouds. And I know that Pure Storage has means for which you can test drive the FlashBlade. Miroslav, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we partner closely. You could start with pretty much either Vertica or Pure Storage and mention that you're interested in the joint solution, and we'll make sure that the right people are included in the conversation. When it comes to test driving FlashBlade, we have kind of our Pure Test Drive Center where you could get some hands-on experience with a FlashBlade array. We also have other ways that we can show you what it's like to work with FlashBlade. We're still sort of setting up the test drive for the Vertica on FlashBlade solution, but that's something that we're working on right now. And Pure works or sells primarily through, or entirely through partners. So there's a really good chance that you're already working with some IT provider partner that Pure works with and who can get you a POC or some other demo for FlashBlade.
Excellent. And it's great to hear that this is so easy to try out, and that POCs are available if it looks like this solution is going to fit your business need. David, I wanted to ask you, I brought up some resources here on the screen. What do you recommend for people who want to learn more about Vertica?
That's great. Thank you. Vertica.com has a wealth of information, including customer use cases as well as solution details. You can, from the Vertica.com website, you can register for our free forum where there's a wealth of Q&A behind from the field. And then also, if you're interested in the Eon on Pure Storage FlashBlade solution and really diving into the details, we had a BDC, which is our conference, just recently. It was all virtualized, and it was only about a month ago. And there are a bunch of presentations there, but one that I would highlight as interesting to people interested in Eon on Pure Storage is Eon Mode past, present, and future. So there are links abound on this presentation, which I understand will be available in PDF version at the end of this this hour. And so I would encourage you to take a look there. David?
Excellent. Yeah, lots of resources, lots of options there to learn more. And Miroslav, same question back to you. I brought up some resources here. What do you recommend people do to get started and learn more about Pure Storage?
So the first link on the upper left is really to the FlashBlade landing page, and that has a lot of information about FlashBlade. So if you're interested in all the things the FlashBlade can do and how it works, there's more resources there. But Vertica, had their big data conference earlier in the year. Pure is planning our Pure Accelerate Digital Conference event starting June 10th. And that is going to be a really great place to learn all about Pure if you don't know already. There will be sessions about Pure and Vertica, as well as a lot more information on FlashBlade. So, we encourage everyone to sign up and check it out. It'll be free and online starting in June 10th.
Excellent. Yeah, I look forward to attending and learning more about Pure Storage and Vertica on that event myself. I want to point out to the audience out there that the links on the slide window right there are clickable if you just mouse over with your mouse. you can actually click on those links. You don't have to try to keep them in mind and go over to a browser and type them in. Just click on the link and it'll open up a new browser tab. With that, I want to award our Amazon $300 gift card to Omar Sadler from Virginia. Congratulations. We'll reach out to you to deliver that prize. And David and Miroslav, I want to thank you so much for being on the event today. Great presentations all around.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you to Pure Storage and Vertica for supporting today's event. For more information, of course, visit purestorage.com. Sign up for Accelerate as well. Also visit vertica.com. Check out the resources and the numerous options to try out the Pure Storage and Vertica solution for yourself. I hope that you learned a lot and had a great time on today's event. I know that I did. We'll see everyone next time.